fear like nothing I have ever known would seize me because I could hear its call, like 1,000 stabbing blades inside my head. I always wake up screaming. My parents learned to comfort me after this spell of nightmares, which happened unfailingly to me every last day of the month. Like always, when the day breaks, I forget. But not today. Up, lazy cur. Elric, I say, wake up. I almost did not respond. My focus was held by the flashing blue light that seemed to be pressed beneath my eyelids and the remnants of a dream that stayed with me for a while. The voice of my younger sister entered my ears. She had learned this new word the last time that I saw her, and she was looking for every opportunity to use it. I'm up, I replied lazily as I yawned, reaching back to scratch the side of my neck. I dismissed the blue light against my vision and opened my eyes to see a tiny silver orb floating by my head, my alarm clock. Some might say it said something of my mental state that I had the voice of my little sister screaming in my ears in the morning to wake me up, and I will reply to them that they had never met my sister. That little munchkin is one of the most dangerous people I have ever met. Reaching out for the floating orb, I grabbed it from the air and carefully tucked it in the cupboard next to my cot. The light of the morning sun was shining through the walls of my tent, and the sound of activities around the camp suddenly became louder in my ears. I was always a deep sleeper, and even though I knew I should have been awake earlier, the long and tiring journey up to this place had placed a heavy burden on my endurance. However, I was a bit relieved that the long journey had come to an end and we had finally reached our destination. For months ago, I was very lucky and edged out most of my classmates to be one of the 4 acolytes chosen on this expedition to visit one of the largest known skyfallen pyramids on the continent. 10,000 years ago, they had fallen from the sky, 31 of them, distributed across the known world at intervals that no mage has been able to explain as coincidence. The academies call them the Caelith or sky bones in normal speech, and they have never been opened because every serious expedition to attempt it has ended without explanation after years of effort. This expedition was most likely not going to change anything in this regard, but for me, it may as well change my life because there were several adept-level mages on this expedition, and this was a chance for me to learn from them without the pressure of having thousands of young acolytes all vying for their attention. I need to get up earlier so I can make a good impression, else I am sure Rex would find a way to spoil my name before the teachers, I muttered to myself. Rex, Bari, Dara, and I were the chosen acolytes, and I was selected last as all of them had better qualifications than I did. I did not see it as a bad thing. In fact, it was a thing of pride for me because I was the only acolyte here that did not come from a noble house or a rich family, and I was able to reach this position on my own merits alone. Blinking my eyes, I called up my status screen to show me what 2 years of study and practice in the academy had given me. Name, Elric Voss, age, 16, title, acolyte, available titles, anima depth, 34, acolyte, disciplines, threadwork, 38, acolyte, surge, 31, acolyte, spark, 9, initiate, surge subskill, auxiliary skills, concentration, 27, initiate, anima sensitivity, 24, initiate, observation, 21, initiate, inscription, 19, initiate, meditation, 14, initiate, endurance, 13, initiate, cooking, 12, initiate, first aid, 8, initiate, cartography, 6, initiate, blessings, soul condition, stable. I look at my status screen with a bit of pride. In 2 years, I have been able to become an acolyte as my manipulation of anima had risen through the ranks of initiate all the way to acolyte, and I had threadwork, this discipline, to thank for it. Threadwork was the manipulation of anima into fine, precise shapes, and I learned that I had a particular talent for it. My father was a leather worker, and my mother was a seamstress. From an early age, I had nimble fingers and keen eyesight, so my stitching was both delicate and precise. The years of experience working for my parents did not go to waste when my talent for manipulating anima was discovered by an acolyte passing through the town. One thing led to another, and I found myself at the Aldemir Academy. My mind focused on my core stat, which was anima depth, which was at 34, and I nodded in satisfaction. It had been 33 last month, and if things continued in this manner, it was only a matter of time before I reached the peak of the acolyte grade. I could stand here gushing over my growth, but admiring past victories without looking forward was one way to slowly lose sight of the future. That was what my father always said, and I believed him. It did not take me long to clean up. I had bathed and cleansed myself before I slept, and it was just for me to do a bit of personal grooming, and then I was ready. I wore my gray acolyte robe that had the sigil of the academy on the back, which resembled a blue lidless eye. The last thing I picked was my acolyte staff. Made from the elemental fuchsia tree, this staff was my most precious treasure, as it was with acolytes and mages. For feet long with a smooth shaft, it was a brown rod with a twisted claw at the top, gripping a blue crystal. There were 3 small silver charms I tied around the top of my staff. They came from my sister, mother, and father. Most acolytes would never place such personal items with their staff to distance themselves from mere mortals, but I always thought that this was foolish. foolish. Brushing invisible creases from my robe, I pushed open the flap of my tent and walked out to a world that still had not decided what it wanted to be. There was no sun in the sky or the moon, so the surroundings were stuck in that particular gray of early morning that sits between night and actual daylight that was not dark enough for stars, yet not bright enough for color. Everything in camp existed in shades of ash and pale gold where the cook fires caught it, and above all of it, enormous and absolute and indifferent to the hour, the pyramid. I stopped walking the moment I cleared my tent as I stood in awe at the sight of it. How could I not? Anything that had been clearly designed by an intelligent hand should not be so massive. I had seen the pyramid yesterday on arrival, and the day before that, when it first appeared on the horizon as a dark shape, I had mistaken it for a mountain. I had watched it grow across 4 hours of approach, from an oddity on the skyline into something that reorganized my understanding of scale entirely. I thought by the time we made camp, I had processed it, but I had not processed it. The pyramid filled the southern sky the way a cliff face fills your vision when you stand at its base, simply there, occupying the portion of reality that sky was supposed to occupy. Black, perfectly smooth, angled with a precision that made the surrounding landscape look like an afterthought. It was upside down, so its massive base faced the sky, and its tip was buried an unknown distance into the earth. There were no seams on this pyramid, and even though it had been here for 10,000 years, it had suffered no weathering, and there was no moss or lichen even after 10,000 years of rain. I thought that the pyramid was responsible for the dull morning because its black surface seemed to be drinking the pale morning light and giving nothing back. I stood with my tent at my back and looked at it until my neck ached. Impressive, isn't it? I turned and saw that Dara Osh was sitting on an overturned supply crate 3 meters to my left, both hands wrapped around a tin cup, watching me with the mild amusement of someone who had already done their staring and moved on. She was the first of the 4 chosen acolytes I had met 2 weeks before the expedition departed, at the Academy's equipment distribution. I had arrived early to collect my field kit and found her already there, systematically checking every item against a handwritten list and returning 2 that did not meet her standards. She had not introduced herself and had handed me a copy of the list without looking up and said, "You'll want to check yours too. The third years who pack these are notoriously careless." I had checked. She had been right about everything. Dara was ranked 47 in our cohort, 9 ranks above me, and she carried herself in the particular way of someone who had earned their position through sustained effort rather than natural gift. She was not brilliant the way some mages were brilliant, the kind that made it look effortless. She was better than that. What was the word I could use to describe her? Dara was thorough. Her thread work was 2 points below mine, but her concentration was a full 10 ranks higher, which meant her casts held longer under pressure. I respected that more than raw talent. Talent was something you were handed. Concentration was something you built. "How long have you been up?" I asked. "Long enough." She nodded toward the cook fire at the center of camp. "There's porridge. It's bad, but it's hot." I looked at the cook fire and made a decision I would not fully understand until later. I went to it not because I was hungry, but because doing something with my hands felt necessary. The cook, a heavy-set man named Aldous who had been hired locally and had apparently never cooked for mages before, had abandoned the pot sometime in the last few minutes. I picked up the ladle, tasted it. The porridge was indeed bad, and so I added salt from the tin beside the fire, then pepper, then found a strip of dried herb in the supply crate nearest the fire that had no label and smelled like it might be thyme, and added that too. "What are you doing?" Dara asked, appearing at my elbow, and I tried not to be distracted by her scent. "Fixing it," I replied. "You cook?" "My mother taught me." I stirred. "She said a person who can't feed themselves is a person who depends on the kindness of strangers, and strangers are not reliably kind." Dara considered this. "That's bleak. She's a practical woman." The porridge improved. Not dramatically, but enough. Cooking 12-13 initiate. I smiled at that growth in this auxiliary skill. I have not had much time to cook since I joined the academy, and had to watch the skill languish at 12 for 2 years, but this growth was the perfect morning gift. I was hoping for more gifts like this in this month-long expedition, and with these warm thoughts in my head, I ladled 2 bowls of porridge and handed one to Dara, and she accepted it without ceremony, which I had already learned was how she accepted most things, directly, without fuss, as if gratitude was implicit and therefore did not require performance. It was not hard to see why I was deeply attracted to her, and it helped that she was one of the prettiest girls I had seen. We stood at the fire, and the camp woke up around us, while slowly eating, and I felt a brief flush of happiness in my heart. "I am happy to be here." The sound of the flap of a tent opening drew my attention, and I glanced at one of the people I saw every morning and actively wished I had not, Rex Aldrin. He emerged from his tent, which was notably larger than the other acolyte tents, a detail that had not been accidental, already fully dressed. His field coat spotless despite 4 days of expedition travel. His dark hair arranged in the careful way that required either a mirror or a considerable amount of personal vanity. Probably both. I wore my acolyte robes because of the enchantment on them that kept them clean and cool, thereby saving me a lot in cleaning costs and time, but Rex brought a whole wardrobe with him. He was ranked 31 in our cohort, which made him the highest-ranked acolyte on the expedition, a fact he managed to communicate without ever quite stating it directly, which was its own kind of skill. Rex was from House Aldrin, one of the 6 founding families of the Academy's Patronage Council. He had been doing magic since he was 8 years old, had been taught privately before his formal enrollment, and his surge was at 52 before he even sat his acolyte evaluation. He was, by every technical measure, exceptional, and he was also the person who had told Master Seravan 2 weeks before expedition selection that my cartography scores were too low for fieldwork and that the Academy would be taking a reputational risk by including me. I heard he did this just to ensure that all the fellow acolytes that came on this expedition were all girls, so he could live his harem fantasy. But even if those rumors were untrue, I would not be surprised if there was still a note of truth to it. Seravan had included me anyway, and Rex had not forgotten. He spotted me at the cook fire, and his expression did the thing it always did, a small adjustment, almost imperceptible, that moved it from neutral to the particular variety of pleasant that meant he was calculating something. Voss, he said, you're cooking. Yeah, and he did not like to call me by my first name. Apparently, I replied. Is that wise? We have an actual cook. Aldous stepped away. He accepted the cup Dara held out to him and took a sip. She had poured a third without asking, which told me she was paying attention to the dynamic and had decided to smooth it before it became a thing. His expression shifted again, this time with less calculation in it. That's better than yesterday. Time, I said. He looked at me for a moment longer than was comfortable, then turned toward the pyramid with his cup in both hands and said nothing further, which was the closest Rex Aldrin ever came to a compliment. Bari arrived last, as he always did. Bari Sohn was ranked 38 in our cohort between Dara and me, and he was the only one of the 4 of us I would have called a friend without reservation. He was tall, broad-shouldered, from a merchant family in the northern provinces who had been mildly astonished when their eldest son manifested anima sensitivity strong enough for academy enrollment. His surge was almost as high as Rex's. His attitude toward this fact was the precise opposite of Rex's. He found it mildly interesting and moved on. I did not believe that Bari wanted to be a mage, but he was so talented that he had no choice but to become one. He came out of his tent with his boot in one hand and his sock in the other, hopping slightly, his dark hair pressed flat on one side from sleep. There's a hole, he announced to no one in particular, holding up the sock. In your sock, Dara said. In my sock. Yes. Thank you, Dara. He sat on the nearest crate and began the complicated negotiation of putting on a boot over a sock with a hole in it. Is that porridge? Is it good today? It's better, I said. Elric fixed it, Dara said. Good man. He pointed at me with the sock. You're a good man, Elric. Rex said nothing. He was still looking at the pyramid. Naturally, my eyes were also drawn to it too, but I was always looking at this pyramid with my peripheral vision since I came out of my tent. There was something about the morning light at this angle, or the particular quality of the air in this bowl of land, that made it feel closer than it had yesterday. Or perhaps I was simply more awake. At its base, arranged along the eastern face, was the reason we were here. 6 adept-level mages in field coats, the dark blue of the Academy's research division, were working in a line across approximately 30 meters of the pyramid's surface. Each had a set of instruments on a folding table beside them, brass and glass devices I recognized from textbooks but had never seen in operation. Resonance meters, anima density gauges, a calibration array that was used to measure the depth of magical structures embedded in stone, or in this case, whatever the pyramid was made of that was not quite stone. At the center of the line, moving between the other 5 with the unhurried deliberateness of someone who had designed the experiment and was now checking that everyone else was running it correctly, was Scholar Orith. I had heard of Orith before the expedition. Most acolytes had. He was the foremost living scholar of the Caelith ruins, the author of the 3 definitive academic texts on skyfallen structures, and the person whose proposal had funded this expedition in the first place. In person, he was older than his portrait suggested, thin in the way of someone who forgot to eat when working, with white hair pulled back, and a leather satchel that he wore across his body even at the base of an ancient pyramid at dawn, as though he expected to need his notes at any moment. There had been no chance for me to interact with him during our trip, and I knew that it would be one of my most treasured memories if I were to speak with him, even if it was just a few sentences. As the anima depths increase in the body, so also does the bodily function get enhanced, and so my sight could see across the distance with moderate clarity. Scholar Orith was not using the instruments the way the other mages were. The other 5 were measuring, but Orith seemed to be doing something else, as he held one of his own devices, smaller than the Academy issue equipment, flat against the pyramid's surface with one hand while his eyes were closed. It was as if he was not reading the device but was listening to it, or maybe listening to something through it, and I was not the only one who noticed this odd behavior. What is he doing? Bari asked, appearing at my shoulder with his porridge. I don't know, I said, which was true, and also the beginning of a question I could not yet articulate. "He's been there since before I woke up," Dara said quietly. "I saw him cross the camp in the dark, before 4th hour." Rex turned from the pyramid then and looked at me specifically, I thought, though it was hard to be certain. "He found something yesterday," Rex said. "I overheard him and Commander Rel last night. He didn't say what." We stood at the cook fire in the early gray light and watched the old scholar press his instrument against the black face of the pyramid. And the pyramid said nothing and gave nothing back the way it always had. I was wondering what it would feel like to press my face against that black stone, and a desire to know what Scholar Orith may be hearing from this pyramid filled my chest. Surely, before we leave, there must be at least one chance to get close to the pyramid. The porridge steamed in our bowls, and I spooned some distractedly into my mouth, my eyes not leaving the pyramid. Somewhere behind us, Pell dropped something heavy and swore loudly, and the morning carried on. I heard it before I saw it. A sound like no sound I had a word for. For a moment, the analytical side of my mind was trying to figure out what it was, because the sound was entirely alien. It was not an explosion or an earthquake. I had once heard the groan of settling earth, and that sound did not quite describe what I just heard. The sound was something beneath all of those, a frequency that bypassed my ears entirely and arrived directly in my chest, in the place where I had learned to locate my anima, as though whatever had made the noise was speaking directly to that part of me and nothing else. I believe it was at that moment that something changed inside me, but I could not be sure. Every mage in the camp felt it at the same moment. I know this because I watched it happen. I saw the 6 researchers at the pyramid's base all straighten simultaneously, instruments forgotten, with their heads turning as if they were listening to something. I saw Dara's cup stop halfway to her mouth, and Rex went very still in the particular way he did when he was frightened and did not want anyone to know. Bari said, "What was?" The pyramid answered him, as a deep red pulse that moved through the black surface from somewhere far below, traveling upward the way blood travels through skin when you press your thumb against it and hold it to a flame. The entire pyramid suddenly glowed red, then the light vanished. Then it happened again, and again the pyramid seemed almost to be breathing. My breath was caught inside my chest as I noticed then they were coming too quickly to count, and the entire eastern face of the pyramid was breathing red light in the gray morning, and every instinct I possessed was screaming at me to back away. In the skies above, black clouds began to gather and revolve as if a tornado was descending upon the earth, and as the wind rose around us, I stood, and I watched because I did not yet understand that understanding could wait. My mind seemed to be searching for comfort, and it looked for the man who should have the answers, and I saw Scholar Orith stepping toward the pyramid. I saw him clearly from across the camp, the older man pressing his palms flat against the pyramid's surface, his leather satchel swinging against his hip, his white head bowed as if in prayer or apology. The 5 academy mages around him were retreating, calling to him, and he was not listening to any of them. "Orith!" Commander Rel's voice cut across the camp like a blade. She had emerged from her gray tent already moving, her field coat half-buttoned, one hand on the short rod at her belt. "Get away from the structure. Everyone back. Now, move." The ground suddenly cracked 10 meters from where I was standing. The earth split along a line running east to west as cleanly as if something enormous had drawn a blade across it, and the sound it made was the sound of the world breaking its own rules. It was a tearing sound that I felt in my back teeth and the soles of my feet simultaneously. I thought the open ground almost resembled a massive mouth opening. For 1 second, nothing came out of it. Then they did. We had learned about demons in the academy, as they were one of the most dangerous threats against the safety and sanctity of all life on the continent, although that threat had vanished thousands of years ago. It was a good thing that demons were impossible to find. One would have to go deep into the earth or other dangerous and forbidden places around the continents for a chance to see them. A small demon imp had been brought to the class one time to describe the appearances of demons, and something peculiar had happened to everyone when the imp was brought into the class. Goosebumps had broken across everyone's skin even before we knew what was causing it. Later, we learned that the demon was not even real, but a projection conjured by one of the mages to teach us. The same thing happened here, but it was 10 times, no, 100 times worse. And even as a part of me fought against the knowledge that perhaps I was wrong, reality slapped me in the face as the first demon cleared the lip of the crack as if it was the most natural thing in the world. It emerged and simply began moving low and fast, without any hesitation, as if the concept of the surface world was something it had been waiting 10,000 years to reach. And now that the waiting was over, there was no reason to be cautious about it. I had no framework for what I was seeing. The Academy's demonology curriculum was 3 lectures and a pamphlet, because demons were theoretical historical accounts, travelers' tales, the kind of thing serious scholars footnoted and moved on from. Nothing in 3 lectures and a pamphlet prepared you for the reality of one, not even the projection of that imp. It was low to the ground, perhaps a meter at the shoulder, and it moved on 6 limbs, the front 4 functioning as both arms and legs depending on what the moment required. Its hide was the color of old iron. Its head was narrow and and long, set close to the body, and it had no eyes that I could identify. What it had instead were structures along its jaw, and the sides of its skull that looked like they might be sensory organs, pale and slightly wet, moving with the small, constant adjustments of something that was always listening. It was as if a spider, a centipede, and, weirdly, a human had been joined together to create this demon. It covered 40 meters in the time it took me to register that I should move. Hell did not move either. He was standing 3 meters from the crack with an empty supply crate in both hands, frozen in the posture of someone whose body had received the threat signal and was waiting for the mind to catch up and issue orders, and the mind was taking too long. The demon went through him like he was not there. I will not describe what happened to Pell in detail. I will say that it was fast, and that the sound it made was not the sound I would have expected, and that I looked away before it was finished. And when I looked back, the demon was already moving again, already past him, already angling toward the next nearest body, which was Bari. Bari, move! He moved. He had his staff out. I had not even seen him draw it, and he flung himself sideways, and the demon's leading limb caught only the edge of his field coat and tore it clean from his shoulder. Bari hit the ground rolling and came up already casting a surge discharge that cracked against the demon's flank and made it check its stride for half a second. Half a second was enough for me to get my own staff up. I cast Spark. It was the wrong spell. I knew it was the wrong spell as I cast it. Spark 9 was a candle flicker. It was the first week exercise that serious acolytes filed away and forgot. I cast it because it was the only surge cast I could produce quickly enough to matter, and because doing something felt better than doing nothing, and because the alternative was standing still while the demon turned from Bari to me. The spark hit it on the side of the jaw where one of the pale sensory structures was, and I saw several of those white tendrils wiggle like worms. The demon halted. It was a complete stoppage of movement that was extremely unnatural, lasting perhaps a full second, as though the signal between its intent and its body had been briefly interrupted. Then it turned toward me, and even with no eyes, I knew it was looking at me. That's right, I heard myself say, which was possibly the most foolish thing I had ever done in my life. Here, came. I will tell you what fighting a demon felt like in the plainest terms I can manage, because the honest account is more useful than a dramatic one. This was a lesson taught to me in the academy, and in this moment of crisis, my mind fell back to my teachings, as they were the only thing I had to hold on to. My auxiliary skills, concentration, and observation helped here, I believe, making it so that I could record the most horrific moment in my life in such a dispassionate manner. It felt like being hit by something that did not have a concept of restraint. I did not sense cruelty as the demon came for me. Cruelty implies awareness of the other person's experience. This was simpler and worse than cruelty. It was efficiency. It was as if the demon did not see me as a person, just a roadblock. Like ants, my mind echoed, and indeed, up close, this creature looked a bit like a mutated ant. The demon hit me with one of its leading limbs. The force of it lifted me off the ground and deposited me 4 meters away against a supply crate that collapsed under the impact. The pain was the bright, total kind that temporarily removes your ability to think about anything else. I am going to die. A calm thought rippled through my mind, and I was surprised at that moment that there was no panic inside me, just the acceptance of the truth. The acolyte robe I wore had stopped the limb of the demon from piercing through me, and I stood up, despite feeling as if my chest bone had been crushed. I do not know precisely why I stood up when I should have been lying down and accepting my fate. I think I got up because I could hear the demon coming back, and if I did not get up, it would reach me while I was on the ground, and that would be worse. Bari was shouting my name from somewhere to my left. The camp was chaos, people running, falling, the sound of surge casts crackling and heavy spells being released from the direction of the academy mages, who had stopped retreating and were making a stand near the pyramid's base. Commander Rel's voice cutting through everything as she called for a defensive formation. All of these details entered my mind in an instant, and in the back of my head, my status screen sent an update. Observation 21, 22, initiate. Endurance 13, 15, initiate. I had never had such quick growth before, even though I heard about how facing dangerous situations and powerful opposition could rapidly grow your power as a mage. But what was the use of this quick growth when you would not be alive to enjoy it? A crash ahead, so close to me, caused me to look up and see the demon charging at me. In the brief moment I was distracted, it had already killed Bari and Dara. Their bodies had been pulled apart the way a child breaks a doll, and Rex was nowhere to be found. The demon was heading towards me, and once more I thought I would be afraid, but I was not. Maybe this was adrenaline or the last spark of resolve before everything crashed. I cannot tell. All I know is that I could not die on my back, only fight with everything I had. Once again, my status screen vibrated with an update, perhaps the most important update I had gotten so far, but I did not really care at this moment. Anima depth 34, 35, acolyte. I pushed my staff forward and cast threadwork at the charging demon. Magic is drawn from the soul itself, a substance the ancient academies call anima. Every living being has it, but only those with the right inner structure can consciously shape it. Mages don't cast spells spells so much as they bleed them, as every act of magic costs something real, and it was not just fatigue, but a thinning of the self. We have been taught that, as the special few with high anima sensitivity and growth potential, as acolytes, we should not push ourselves too much at the beginning. Our ability to control magic was like a muscle, and we were still infants, so we should learn to walk before we ran. Even as a full mage, control was still important because if you push too hard, you stop feeling things. Push further, and you forget things, as the magic ate your soul as fuel, and you could pay the ultimate cost if you cast beyond your limit. And that is permanent soul damage, leaving a mage hollow, vacant, alive but no longer quite there. This was what made powerful magic genuinely frightening, not just dangerous. The growth of a mage is slow and steady as we gradually expand the boundary of our souls and increase our anima depth. With all these lessons, as acolyte, we do not just cast spells carelessly, we made sure that we kept a tight lock over our anima depths, opening up a small channel for our soul power to flow through the channels of the spell. And we have been grilled many times not to go below 10% soul power. Below that is when the soul begins to wither away. I cast threadwork for the first time in my life without placing any control over my anima depth. In my mind, I would be dead before tearing my soul apart would even matter. I had not really learned to use threadwork offensively. It was not really a spell designed for something like that at the acolyte level when our anima depths were still too weak to support attack configurations. But there had always been countless thoughts in my mind as to where I could take this spell if I had the opportunity to go all out. With death rushing at my face, I did not have time to think much as I cast the dense lattice seal that Master Seravan had shown us once, the kind designed to slow fast things, and I cast it directly in the demon's path and threw every point of anima depth I had into holding it. In front of me, what resembled a bright blue net appeared for an instant before it turned colorless. Boom! The ground seemed to shake as the demon hit the seal at full speed, and it slowed the way running through deep water slows you. The demon kept fighting the lattice with the brute indifference of something that did not understand what resistance was, only that it existed and needed to be overcome. I held the seal with both hands around my staff and my teeth clenched, and every thread of concentration I possessed, and I bought myself approximately 4 seconds. In any other time, holding this demon would be everything that I could do without risking my soul being torn apart, but I pushed through the strain. And in those 4 seconds, I cast Spark 3 more times, targeting the jaw structure of the demon each time, trying to reproduce whatever had stopped it before. The first cast missed, but I was not surprised that it did, with the strain I was under. The second grazed it. The third hit clean, and the demon made a sound, the first sound I had heard it make, a high, flat tone that was more vibration than noise, and the pause it caused was longer this time, nearly 2 seconds. The lattice broke with a loud snap, and I heard something crack inside my soul. I had nothing left to hold it with. Although I knew I had just held this demon back for 6 seconds, I found myself smiling when I remembered the sound the demon made, because it almost sounded surprised.